It's the 13th and final round of this remarkable tournament, the Tata Steel Masters 2024. So I'm looking at all 4 games that feature the leaders of the tournament going into the final round. Now, I've already looked at the games between Wei and Vidit and Giri and Varmadam. And now I'm looking at Parham Maghsoodloo against Dommaraju Gukesh. So Gukesh, one of the players in the lead, of course. Maghsoodloo, well, he's a class act. He's a tough competitor. And he's not afraid of a scrap. And that's what we got in this game. A Ragazin. So already, there's an imbalance. So Gukesh, of course, desperately wanting to play for a win. And, that's why he goes for a position, an opening which can lead to an imbalance. Queen a4 check, knight c6. So the point is to block that c-pawn. C-pawn is used to challenge white's centre, so that's why the check seems a little strange, but actually it's just to put that knight on c6. So actually the check basically means that white's centre is a little more secure. Castles, and the queen comes back to c2. Well, we've already seen in Giri's game how queen c2 and castle's queenside was an interesting theme, and that is what Maghsoodloo has planned as well. Rook e8, so that allows the bishop to drop back to f8, so that just secures the king side and can bring the rook into the game. An exchange on d5 and bishop d3. So Maghsoodloo lining up against the king. And knight e7, that's an interesting move. So as I said, black needs to be able to challenge the centre. So that's why the knight drops back and makes room for the c-pawn. Now, of course, white can castle kingside, but instead knight e5. So this signals aggressive intent. a6 played. Basically, Gukesh wants to be able to play c5, but wants to rule out bishop b5. And g4. Here we go. So Maghsoodloo is really up for this, and Gukesh, he would have welcomed this rash attack. Rash is perhaps too strong a word. It's very logical, really. When the centre is pretty stable, you can attack on the wing, as Giri did. But yeah, for Gukesh, he's got a double-edged position. That's all he wants. He's desperate to play for a win. So g5 threatened, so therefore g6 to block the diagonal. f3, an important move, just protecting the pawn, but also controlling the e4 square. c5, so Gukesh hits back. That's what he's been aiming for over the past few moves. Desperately needs to destabilize white's centre, or sometimes you can push on as well and go for a storm on the queenside. Castle's queenside, yeah, centre looking a little bit shaky, so time to get the king out, and it goes queenside so that he can potentially use the rooks on the king side. So really double-edged position. Knight d7, challenging the knight in the middle. Really such a powerful piece. Okay, perhaps you'd like to have a think. How would you play with white here? Time for me to have a drink, time for you to have a think. Well, an interesting idea here is just to allow the knight to be exchanged. Even just giving up this pawn, because if f4 then bishop takes g4 is possible. But just give up that pawn and just go for it on the h-file. I mean, maybe white just exchanges here, and doubles on the h-file. I mean, this is quite dangerous. But Maghsoodloo thought for 16.5 minutes and played in an even more uncompromising way. He played knight takes f7. Can you believe this? He gave up a piece and then just continued like nothing had happened. It's incredible. Now, I suppose you could argue that, for the moment, black's pieces are a little bit congested. But, I mean, this is quite extraordinary, the way that Maghsoodloo's played. Now, if I were playing black here, I would just regroup. I would play here and knight f8 and just make sure all these entry squares on the h-file are covered, and that frees the bishop as well, and the king is looking stable enough. I mean, sometimes you might be able to drop the knight back here to sort of improve communication. But Gukesh thought for 18 minutes here and played very aggressively. b5. I just think that's really interesting that his first thought is to gain counterplay before he starts to defend his king. That's incredibly brave. h5. c4. So he has managed to push the bishop back from this diagonal, or even that diagonal. So you can see, there was a good point to playing like that, but still, I mean, it's incredibly brave. And now he goes for the defensive setup with bishop g7 and knight f8. An exchange on g6, so you can see how these pieces cover the entry squares on the h-file, so that's important. Bishop e3. Okay, Maghsoodloo makes room for the queen to switch to the h-file. It's interesting, the similarities between the Giri's game and this one, just going for it on the h-file. And white does have an impressive centre, although it's not so easy to actually exploit that, to use it, but it certainly shuts out black's pieces. Rook b8, another 18-minute think 18-minute think from Gukesh. So he's looking to create counterplay on the b file. Really interesting. Queen h2, threatening a rook, which came up to b7. And bishop e2. It's not easy to see how white makes progress here. Do you try and push your pawns? But that's not easy. You could exchange bishops. That might be a way to do something. But after the exchange, queen comes here and can possibly sweep across to the king side and can plug some holes there. Anyway, Maghsoodloo played bishop e2. And Gukesh went for it. He creates counterplay on the b file. I mean, I think this is such an interesting attitude. He's not looking to sort of, find sort of solid defensive moves. He's really just wants to take the initiative back, basically. And why not? Because Maghsoodloo's attack is pretty slow. So why not go for it? Bishop h6. An exchange. Now, queen d6, queen b6. No, queen a5. Threatening queen a1. The king comes to c2. And then queen b6. So when the queen moves to b6, there is a real threat to take on b2 with check. And of course the queen can cover across the board on the king's side. I mean, if this queen has to drop back with queen c1, then okay, there's no chance for the attack, basically. So queen f4 check. Now, I mean, this next move of Gukesh is quite extraordinary. He plays King E6. Incredible. Just marching his king into the center of the board in the line of fire. But he's looking to slip across to the queen side. I mean, it's an extraordinary move. In fact, my computer points out that bishop f5, another ludicrous move, is actually a winning move. Remarkably. So there is a serious threat to take here. So rook b1. I mean, this is just one of the main lines. And now g5 takes knight e6, so it's gaining time against the queen. The queen comes back and knight d4 check, and black is going to crash through. Now, very difficult to spot those moves. Bishop f5 just looks too weird for words, and there were plenty of other really complex variations associated with that. It was not that straightforward. However, I'm just pointing it out. It's a mad game and it's a mad move, and bishop f5 is actually the best move here. But king e6, wow. I mean, the ambition is incredible. Maghsoodloo played rook b1, defending the pawn. Well, an understandable move. And I'm going to show you another computery variation just very quickly. My computer points out that pawn takes pawn check, king d7, and now b3, mad, is the best defense. Why? Well, if pawn takes pawn, then king b2. Okay, we can understand that. That just blocks the b file. But watch this. Rook takes b3. Bishop takes c4. And after the check, the king finds a safe square on d3. And if rook takes, for example, here, a very difficult position to assess. It seems to me that one misstep by either side will be fatal. Completely unclear position. Anyway, I'm just pointing it out that check and b3 is the computer suggestion an incredible defense. I mean, it's actually very interesting. But anyway, rook b1. Back to human chess. Rook b1 and king d7. So Gukesh runs away with his king. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop b7. A very cool move. Another cool move. So the bishop finally enters the game. Queen f7. And this is extraordinary. You know, how do you play with black here? Well, Gukesh kept attacking. Rook b8. So he's still looking to attack white's king. d6. Maghsoodloo's not giving up. That's basically just to deflect the queen away for a move. Takes the pressure off. d5. Bishop a8. So the queen looking to come back to b6. Rook h8. And now, because the rook has moved away from the first rank where it can possibly go here, in fact, bishop takes d5 is possible. It's incredibly strong. This is a winning move. Knight takes, queen takes. Notice that rook d1 just isn't on in this position because of rook takes b2. Rook takes f8. Queen e5, very well calculated, very nice move. So even though he gave up the knight on f8, queen e5 is a winning move because threat, queen takes bishop, but also rook takes pawn. And it's decisive. There's no way up for white. King d1, exchange on f8, and c3 is a winning move. A pin here, but also a check here, and it's game over. King e1, rook takes. White is actually running out of pieces, and it's a very nice winning move. King e6. You can see, well, we've seen that many times before, that the knight protects the king beautifully. Covers c8, covers g8. The king is perfectly secure on e6, and that's the end of the game basically. So Maghsoodloo resigned. Wow, what a fantastic game by Gukesh. Played in a brilliant spirit. I mean, he really gave his all there, took incredible risks. But, I love it that, after Maghsoodloo sacrificed his piece, which is kind of bonkers, but fascinating, just really going for it, that Gukesh played so bravely after that in making sure that he was going to get counterplay on the b file, and ultimately he managed to break through. Absolutely fantastic game. So, Gukesh joined Wei Yi and Giri, tied for first. Now, could Abdusatorov win against Donchenko and join them for a 4-way tie? I'm going to show you that game any second. I've just got to record it first. I've done the analysis. Join me in a second.